It was a cold, silent night in New York. Ryan, an Uber driver, accepted one last ride before ending his shift. Nothing out of the ordinary, except for the destination, a distant neighborhood, almost forgotten by maps. When the passenger got into the car, Ryan noticed something strange. The man wore a long coat, was completely silent and stared out of the window, as if it were exact information about where he was going. Without knowing why, Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. Something about that race was wrong. Welcome to the channel where every ride could be your last. Here, we tell the darkest and most disturbing stories of drivers and passengers who have faced the unexplainable on the roads. If you like feeling that chill down your spine, subscribe now. Hit the bell so you don't miss any chilling stories and share them with your brave friends. Get ready, because the next race could be yours. The Mysterious Passenger. Introduction, 5 minutes. Ryan was used to driving at night. New York City, which during the day was a whirlwind of people and traffic, became almost unrecognizable in the later hours. There was something calming about driving through empty streets, with city lights twinkling in the background, without the incessant noise of the day. He always believed he knew every corner of that metropolis, until accepting that last race. It was almost midnight when the order appeared on the app. The starting point was close, but the final destination. Ryan had never heard of this neighborhood. End of Carol. He thought it was just another one of those forgotten suburbs, the ones that almost no one visits unless they have to. Maybe it was just a passenger wanting a long trip home. One more run and he would end his shift. When the car stopped at the meeting point, a dimly lit corner on a quiet street, the passenger appeared almost like a shadow. A tall man, in a long black coat, with a distant look. He got into the car without saying a word, just nodded, and Ryan drove towards his destination. The first few minutes of the ride were silent, and Ryan tried to ignore the nagging feeling that was growing inside him. Something about that passenger didn't feel right. Maybe it was the fact that he hadn't said anything until now, not a greeting or any common interaction. The silence in the cabin was almost palpable. Trying to break the ice, Ryan asked, "So, going home?" The passenger took a second to respond. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and slurred, as if it were coming from far away. Something like that. "But I'm in no rush." Ryan agreed, but a twinge of discomfort crept in. Who wouldn't be in a rush at midnight? He was beginning to regret taking that race. After a moment of silence, the passenger spoke again. "It's been happening for a long time at night, hasn't it?" Ryan was surprised by the question, but replied, "Yes, sometimes. One night is calmer." The man smiled lightly, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. The nights keep secrets that the days never reveal. He paused, looking at the road ahead. Have you ever heard of drivers never coming home? Ryan felt a shiver run down his spine. Disappeared? Like this? The passenger slowly turned his head towards you, eyes now fixed on Ryan. Drivers who picked up passengers at night and were never seen again. Ryan gave a nervous laugh. Horror stories, right? We hear a lot of them out there. The man shook his head. No. It's not just stories. It happened to more than you realize. Ryan tried to stay focused on the road, but the discomfort was growing. Something about the man's tone made him uneasy, as if he knew something that Ryan didn't. He avoided looking directly at the passenger, but his presence seemed to fill the car in a suffocating way. And how do you know that? Ryan asked, unable to hide the tension in his voice. The passenger looked back out the window, as if reliving memories. I've already met some of them. Drivers who ran their last races. Ryan forced a smile, trying to lighten the mood. Well, if that's the case, I hope today isn't my last race. The man did not respond immediately. Instead, I looked directly at Ryan, a piercing gaze that made him feel an icy cold in his stomach. Maybe you're already on your last one. Ryan tried to laugh at the last sentence, but his throat was dry, and the sound that came out was weak, almost forced. He didn't like the way the passenger looked at him. Those staring, almost unblinking eyes reflected something cold, something Ryan couldn't define, but that made him feel exposed, as if he were being trained. Trying to regain control of the situation, he said, "Look, I've heard a lot of strange stories while driving, but that's it, right? Stories." He sounded confident, but the tension in his voice was evident. The passenger continues to look out the window without immediately responding. "Do you believe in fate, Ryan?" The question was asked by the driver out of surprise. How did he know his name? Ryan was sure it wasn't mentioned, but maybe the passenger saw the name on the app. "I guess not much," Ryan replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I believe we make our own choices." The man blessed again, that smile that brings no comfort. Choices. Yes, many drivers thought the same before taking the last ride. Ryan began to feel suffocated, as if the air in the cabin was thicker. So what happened to them? Those drivers you need. The passenger sighed, as if remembering something distant. Some disappeared without a trace. Others, well, they met an end they never imagined. Ryan glanced briefly at the rearview mirror, his stomach dropping. He didn't know why, but he felt like the man was talking directly about him. "And what makes these drivers disappear?" he asked, without really wanting to know the answer. The man looked at him with a calm expression, but his eyes were gloomy. "Some pick up passengers they never should have picked up. Passengers carrying more than just suitcases." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "These passengers are always looking for the next driver. And once they get in the car, the driver's destiny is already set." Ryan felt his blood run cold. He had never been superstitious, but something about the passenger's words seemed too real to be a simple horror story. Trying to laugh it off, he turned his attention to the road. The path seemed longer than expected, and the streets were deserted. The neighborhood we were headed to, Carroll's End, still didn't show up on the GPS. "So, where are you going, exactly?" Ryan asked, trying to change the subject. The passenger looked out the window again, his voice low and barely audible. "Where they all went. A place that's not on the maps. Where drivers like you don't come back." Ryan started breathing faster. He looked at the GPS again, waiting for the app to adjust the route, but the screen continued to show an endless straight line, as if he were driving in a void. Anxiety rose within him. "Look, if you're bullying me, you're succeeding." The passenger finally turned to him, eyes fixed on Ryan. "I'm not trying to scare you, Ryan. I'm warning you." The air in the cabin felt heavier. Ryan looked at the GPS again, and now, instead of a route, the screen was black. No signal. No direction. Just darkness. The passenger leaned preferentially forward, voice now almost a whisper, "You're driving on their road now." Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. The words echoed in his mind as he looked out the window, trying to see some sign of life, some sign that this wasn't real. But the darkness outside seemed to swallow everything, and the feeling that I was driving to an unknown destination grew stronger and stronger. "This is crazy," Ryan muttered, trying to convince himself that he was imagining things. The passenger just smiled, a smile that now seemed like a sentence. "Careful, Ryan. Careful who you take for the last race." Ryan didn't respond. Fear slowly consumed him, and he no longer knew if what was growing was a figment of his imagination or if, in fact, he had crossed into something he could not understand. The darkness ahead seemed to deepen, and with it, the feeling that Ryan was driving to much more than just a forgotten neighborhood. Ryan kept his hands firmly on the steering wheel, but sweat was dripping down his forehead. What started as a normal race was turning into something surreal, and he felt that each passenger's word took him deeper into an abyss he didn't know how to avoid. The car advanced through streets that seemed endless, as if the city itself was stretching, deforming around it. The lights on the street lamps grew further and further apart, until everything around them was enveloped in oppressive darkness. There were no more houses, cars, or any sign of life. Just the empty road and the passenger. Ryan tried to adjust the GPS again, but the screen remains black with no signal. He hit the device with the palm of his hand in frustration, then glanced at the passenger in the back seat. The man was too calm, his eyes fixed on the path ahead, as if he was waiting for something. "Listen," Ryan said, trying to keep his voice calm. "If this is a joke or a crazy story to scare me, congratulations, you did it. Now tell me, where are we really going?" The passenger was invited again, but there was something cold about that smile. He addressed Ryan directly, and his tone was serene, almost mesmerizing. "We're going where everyone goes, after all. To the place where no one returns." Ryan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. What did it do? A place from which no one returns? He didn't believe in ghosts, but the atmosphere of that race was becoming increasingly unbearable. "You know what? I'm going to leave you here," Ryan said abruptly, pulling the car to the side of the road. He looked at the passenger, trying to hide the panic that was now taking over his mind. "I think you'd better get out of the car now." But the passenger didn't move. He just kept looking at Ryan with an expression that bordered on doctor. "Do you really think you can leave me? Do you think you can just stop and go on with your life, as if nothing ever happened?" Ryan swallowed hard. "I'm not kidding. Get out of the car. Now." The man leaned forward, his dark eyes glowing strangely, as if they were hiding something far beyond Ryan's understanding. "You're past the point of no return, Ryan. It doesn't matter what you do now. You're stuck." Ryan felt a shiver so intense that his body went rigid. He left the door handle, ready to get out of the car, and left all that behind, but the door wouldn't open. He tried again, harder, but the door was locked, without explanation. He looked at the lock button, but it hadn't locked on the doors. "I'm going out," he said, his voice wavering. But the passenger remained silent, watching his every move with disturbing tranquility. Suddenly, the car radio turned on by itself, interrupting the silence with high-pitched static. Ryan looked at the dashboard, his heart racing. Amidst the static, a voice began to emerge. A distorted voice, difficult to understand, but it seemed to say something. "He is with you." Ryan felt his blood run cold. He looked at the passenger, but the man just kept the same enigmatic smile, as if he already knew what the radio was going to say. "Who are you?" Ryan finally asked, his voice almost a whisper, fear taking over every cell in his body. The passenger tilted his head slightly to the side, as if analyzing Ryan. I'm just another passenger, just like you. The difference is that I've already accepted my destiny. And now, it's your turn to accept yours. Ryan tried to control the panic rising in his throat. Accept what? What are you talking about? The passenger moved more, his voice low but threatening. You were chosen, Ryan. Chosen to take the last race. Just like the others before you. Ryan blinked, confused. The others? The driver you brought here? And the one who came before him? Everyone thought it was just another race. Until they realized they were taking something or someone that they should never have taken. Ryan was now shaking. Every word that came out of that man's mouth made his heart beat faster, as if an accident had happened. He opened the steering wheel with so much force that his fingers did. You can't be serious, Ryan stuttered, not sure if he was trying to convince the passenger or himself. The passenger looked directly into Ryan's eyes, and the smile on his face widened, almost evil. Look around you, Ryan. It's been a while since you left town. It's been a while since you left everything behind. Ryan looked out the window, and his heart sank. The road was no longer the same. The city streets and lights were gone, and now he was driving on a dark path, surrounded by nothing but shadows. An absolute void. He tried to control his breathing, trying to think of a way out, but he knew deep down that there was no longer any escape. Ryan stared at the road, or what was left of it. The city no longer existed around him, as if it had been devoured by darkness. Only the road went ahead, straight and endless, surrounded by a dense shadow that seemed alive. The passenger, who until then was just an uncomfortable presence, now seemed to be the very center of all that distorted reality. This can't be happening, Ryan muttered to himself, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. But he knew he was gambling. He could feel, in every part of his body, that something terribly wrong was enveloping him. The passenger, calmly sitting in the back seat, spoke in a calm and cold tone, "Haven't you seen it yet, Ryan?" Ryan opened his eyes, trying to understand what the man was implying. Realize what? That I'm trapped here? That there's no way out? What do you want from me? The passenger sighed, as if disappointed in Ryan's lack of understanding. You've been here a long time, Ryan. It wasn't this run that got you. You accepted this trip long before today. From the moment you started driving around at night, picking up strangers, you've been sucked into it. It's your destiny. Ryan shook his head in denial. No, I can go back. I can stop. This doesn't make sense. The passenger leaned forward, his eyes glowing in the darkness. And where do you think you are, Ryan? Look around you. Ryan looked, and what he saw made his stomach turn. There was no longer a road. The world around his car was now an absolute void, as if he were floating in darkness. The feeling of isolation was overwhelming. His heart raced. Where are we? What is this? The passenger leaned back in the seat, crossing his arms, a dark smile on his lips. You are on the final road. The last journey. The place where everyone who ignores the signs ends up. Ryan felt sweat running down his forehead, fear taking deeper root. He slammed on the brakes, expecting the car to stop, but the vehicle continued moving, as if it was no longer under his control. There was no longer an engine, there was no longer the sound of tires on the asphalt, just the sound of the wind passing by, whispering like distant voices. Stop now, Ryan sincerely, looking at the passenger in the back seat. The man sent it again, as if he knew that Ryan still didn't fully understand. I can't stop what has already started. No one can. You've already passed the turnaround point, and now you will meet the fate that all drivers meet when they pick up the wrong passenger. Despair was growing inside Ryan, his mind trying to find any logical situation that was impossible. Why me? What do you want from me? Why are you doing this to me? The passenger looked at Ryan, his eyes fixed and unforgiving. I didn't choose you. You chose the road. And now, you're going to take me to the end. Ryan felt an icy cold run down his spine. Take it to where? The passenger slowly leaned forward, getting closer to Ryan's ear, and whispered. As far as I was taken by the one who came before you. At that moment, Ryan understood. He was not just a victim. He was trapped in a cycle, a curse that passed from driver to driver. Each one who accepted the last race became a passenger in the next one, trapped forever on an endless road, where the only way out was to take the next unfortunate person to their final destination. Ryan looked desperately at the road ahead, but there was nothing but emptiness. His fate was sealed. He was the next to disappear, and eventually he would be the one sitting in the back seat, waiting for the next driver to take the wrong ride. The passenger's voice echoed through the darkness one last time, soft but with terrifying certainty. Now, Ryan, it's your turn. The darkness ahead seemed to close completely around the car, and silence took over, as if the world around it had ceased to exist. Ryan let go of the steering wheel, knowing his fight was over. And so he was consumed by darkness, another soul to be lost on the road of the damned. Did you like this story? Do you have something incredible to share? If you or someone you know has had a hair-raising experience in traffic, whether as a driver or passenger, send your story. Who knows, it might appear in our next video. Send your report in the comments or by email, and let's explore the mysteries of the road together.